Woman mails 150-year-old letter, discovers this about the sender. Spring of 2015, the Smithsonian Magazine was contacted by the U.S. Postal Service's historian regarding a very intriguing mystery. It appeared that the postmaster in Newaygo, Michigan, received an envelope containing letters mysteriously marked Postmaster Newaygo, Michigan. It was the first of its kind. The town's zip code was added by a different hand. And there wasn't any return address. But what it contained were letters not from the century and from the Civil War, to say the least. To check the authenticity of the envelopes, a curator of philately in Washington, D.C., at the National Postal Museum was contacted. Daniel Piazza pronounced the letters to be authentic right away. This only made it all mysterious. Where had the letters all come from? Why had they suddenly reappeared now? As it had already reached the attention of the museum, the mystery of the item now had to be scrutinized. This would be critical in helping them understand and share the item's importance with the public. They also needed to know how the letters got to the postmaster and who was the mysterious sender who mailed it after 150 years. The historians revealed the letters were written by someone who had lived during the Civil War. To fill in the gaps in the sender's biography, Spurger had the best insight with his expertise in the Civil War. He uncovered eventually that there were no descendants looking for the young letter sender. It felt like he was looking for someone to tell his story. His research revealed that the young sender must have died at the age of 21. Scrutinizing the envelope further, the postmark indicated that it had been mailed the day before April 23, 2015 from Grand Rapids, 36 miles away. The careful, somewhat spidery penmanship suggested that the sender could have been an elderly senior. Except for the received unsealed sticker on the back, there was no sign that the envelope contained anything other than, say, an authorization to hold mail, recalls the woman who then ran the post office in this tiny Muskegon River lumber town. Inside that envelope was another one, brown and brittle, its edges a little bit torn. A battle scene, in blue and red ink and bearing the legend, "The War for the Union," was imprinted on the top left corner. Though the postage stamp had been removed, the name of the city of mailing, Norfolk, Virginia, was partially legible. It was obvious that the letters were mailed by someone who could have been a soldier in the Civil War to his family. Could they have been held onto by someone in the family all this time, probably just left in attic or passed down along? Fortunately, not thrown away so that he who'd find them could send them to the postmaster, thinking that the postmaster would probably find the family. Back to the day on April 24, 2015 of the letter's arrival in the Newaygo, Michigan post office, Postmaster Lori Bowes started her daily routine by going through her mail. That was the day she came across a mystery letter in her pile addressed only to Postmaster, Newaygo, Michigan 49337. She pondered over it first and then opened it. The sender had, after all, addressed it to the postmaster. Lori Bowes could not help but feel intrigued. It would have been the first time she would ever receive a letter addressed to just the postmaster, without her name on it. She opened the envelope and what she found would make her embark on a trip through history over 150 years into the past. She wasn't even aware what was inside the envelope, so she ripped open the letter without any precaution. Well, she assumed it was just a regular envelope with a perfectly legal stamp. It was strange though that the letter didn't bear a return address. However, this is sometimes also normal for letters they come across in a post office. As she opened the envelope, she was initially quite confused. Later, she would have to admit that she could have been a bit more cautious at the time. But to be fair, how would she have known what was inside the plain and simple envelope? Luckily, the actual letter inside remained intact. However, she learned a very important lesson: you can come across the most unexpected and delicate things in the ordinary post. As she read the letters it contained inside, it dawned on Bowes that she was reading a note sent home by a soldier during the Civil War. "Suddenly, I felt the enormity of what was in my hand," she says. "My heart leapt in my throat." She was holding a piece of Americana. She was mortified that she'd ripped open the outer envelope. To solve the mystery, the Smithsonian Magazine was contacted. The magazine's 1.8 million circulation with its 6 million monthly readers were essential in putting the word out about the source of the letters. This was the strategy they opted in getting the sender to reveal him or herself. The next days would see dozens of the museum staff, Postal Service and Smithsonian Magazine search how to solve the mystery envelope. Spurger, a USPS researcher, did impressive research on the young sender. Beth Haight, Smithsonian Collections Manager, worked with the magazine staff to arrange a photo shoot to create a historically correct recreation of a Union soldier's writing space. They were certain that the accompanying article, "Newly Discovered Letters Bring New Insight into the Life of a Civil War Soldier," would bring the sender into the open. Eventually the story by Franz Lids was published in the magazine, detailing the life of a young soldier who had authored the letters. It had become wildly popular with Smithsonian's online readers. Pretty soon, an email from Courtney Cresta from Spring, Texas, arrived saying that she knew who mailed the letters. Nancy Cramblett of Muskegon, Michigan, says she mailed the letters in hopes that the post office would find family members of the young soldier that wrote them during the Civil War. It was a delight speaking with Nancy Cramblett about how she found the letters, and here's what she recounted. Her husband passed away in 1978, but he was always dealing in junk. She found the letter and eventually, she put it in with his funeral stuff and forgot about it. There were other letters that had his family name on it, so she sent those to his family, and one day she was going through the funeral stuff and just found them. They laid on her desk probably another 6 months before she decided what she could do with them. Hoping they could find a family member, so she put them in the mailbox. She didn't put in the return address. She just addressed it. She happened to be an avid subscriber to the Smithsonian Magazine without always having the time to read it. But the week after, she sat down and read it. She could not believe it. Oh my gosh, that's the letters that I sent out. She was floored. She couldn't believe they went that far. To Nancy, it was just shocking. She never realized what a historical difference they would make. It was just something she didn't need hanging around her house. But she couldn't throw them away either. She decided she wasn't keeping them in her house any longer, so she did this. In an interview, Nancy recalls that she never wanted to put a return address on the envelope. She just addressed it to the postmaster the year she remembered to mail them. All she ever wanted was to find a family member. She figured if there were any family members in Newaygo, the post office would find them. She never really thought of them as being the historical piece that it was, since she found it in with others that her husband had from his family. He dealt in junk. She never knew where he got the stuff he hauled home. She instantly thought that the letters could have not been from his family. There were letters in the same box that were from his family. She could tell the difference between his family letters and stuff he brought home that was junk because the letters from his family had the family name on it. Nancy doubted that there has been any connection between her husband's family and the young soldier's family. Her husband was from Ohio, and he got those family letters when his mother died and his dad died. He probably shopped for it at a yard sale because he liked to go to yard sales. Asked if Nancy had ever read the letters, she mentioned she had read them at that time and put them back in the envelope. She thought it was very interesting, but did not realize the historical content or even how old they were. Having lived in the neighboring town for most her life, she have never heard of a Shefford family. Back in the postmaster's office, not a soul could explain the mystery letter that turned up at the post office, and it was not long after that investigators and departmental superiors at the United States Postal Service, and even the Smithsonian, joined forces to solve the case. Postmaster Bose then realized that by mistake, she'd ripped a piece of it off the older envelope when she'd opened it. If only she had known, she would have been far more careful, as she certainly knew how fragile older paper could be. As Bose investigated the mystery letter closer, it came to light that the envelope had an image of what looked like a battle on it. The words "The War for the Union" were still clearly visible on the envelope. With further inspection, Bose realized that the mystery letter must have been from the Civil War. She was ridden with guilt due to how hastily she'd torn open the envelope. After all, she treasured the efforts made all over to retain American history, and this item in her own hands could be a valuable part of it that required preserving. Spurger, who worked on the authenticity of the letters, was felt moved by the young sender's words. He identified with him as a boy off to see the world. He began by transcribing the handwriting. Literacy rates were high on both sides during the Civil War, about 90% for Union soldiers, above 80% for Confederates. Still, many enlisted men preferred dictating messages to comrades whose writing was swifter or neater or both. Once the letters were deciphered, the sender would have been identified as Nelson Shefford. Here's what Spurger was able to piece together. Nelson Shefford was born in 1843 or 44, the eldest of Orrin and Sarah Shefford's 3 children. In 1850, the family lived in Grass Lake, a whistle stop of the Michigan Central Railroad. No saint, the adolescent Nelson was arrested for burglary and did a stretch in Jackson State Prison. By the summer of 1860 he was working as a mill hand in the town of White River, where the Sheffords had resettled. Private Shefford was a devoted son, assuring his relatives that he could read their letters and promising that he would keep out of harm's way. He was sure that a Union victory was within grasp. One of the letters read, "Alexandria, Virginia. My dear parents, I received your ever-welcome letter last Sunday, and I just returned from guard, and I was just in the right mood to write, so I will try it. We left Union Mills the next day after I sent you the letter. As we passed Fairfax Courthouse, we marched about 6 miles when we were drawn up in line of battle. But nothing happened. Only a few of our pickets taken prisoners. The next morning we took 3 prisoners rebels." The story of a mystery letter received by Lori Bose, the postmaster in a small town of Michigan, has now been solved. But the sad story of the original sender of the letters inside the mystery letter, Nelson Shefford, the young 21-year-old soldier who passed away 2 weeks before his 3rd Christmas in the Union Army, will live forever. All we leave behind are memories regardless of who we are or what we do. Our legacy is all that survives after we pass on. Nelson Shepard's legacy lives on.